One of the most interesting aspects of having lived in New Orleans is the culture. New Orleans culture is by far one of the most rich and diverse in the United States. It's truly unique, and there are a number of differences throughout the city. There are Creoles and there are Cajuns, there are social aid and pleasure clubs, and there are Mardi Gras Indian. The different organized events, from the Mardi Gras parades themselves all the way down to things like Super Sunday or Second Lines, all weave an intricate fabric of culture that really isn't replicable anywhere else in the United States. When Katrina hit, one of the things that it really did is it dispersed people from New Orleans throughout the United States and the world. And one of the great aspects of the United States is the sort of communal affection that everyone shared for this moment in time and these people. So in Texas and in New York, all over the United States, California to Washington, people took in people who fled New Orleans and the storm and housed them throughout the rebuilding process. And even here in Austria, I know in Innsbruck, they took in a number of people that were victims of Katrina and housed them there. And so New Orleans culture spread throughout the world.
At the time after Katrina, I worked for a home improvement company, and there was a lot of need in the area for volunteers from other areas to come because a lot of the people who had been there obviously left the area. So I volunteered to go spend a week there to work at one of the stores in the area that had been impacted in New Orleans. But I wasn't the only one. There were hundreds of people that came from other areas that hadn't been impacted that were willing to kind of like help out. And so that was really kind of almost inspiring to see that so many people across the United States, not just from Louisiana, not just from New Orleans, were willing to, come and help out.
One of the challenges for the city of New Orleans was to bring people back. And so there were a number of new social aid and pleasure clubs that sprung up throughout New Orleans. One of the best stories I've heard is in the 9th Ward, which was by far one of the poorest areas of New Orleans, but also one of the hardest hit areas of New Orleans, so the lowest ground in the city. It was inundated by flooding. They had a hard time rebuilding at all. In the 9th Ward, they started a new social aid and pleasure club through a massive event with a lot of advertisement, and the end result was a huge community that was reunited in New Orleans, in the 9th Ward, and those members that couldn't come were calling in on phones, and people were handing their phones around and searching out the neighbors and the friends and the loved ones that they had left behind. And that community spirit is really what defines New Orleans to me.
So at the time I went, it was like 10 weeks after, and there was a major effort to try and clean up and rebuild, and there was a lot of different things that were needed. But what really struck me is just how massive and how many people had been affected and impacted. Just miles and miles of houses that had been basically destroyed or severely damaged. So much was needed, and so many people were working so hard and so diligently to clean up and rebuild and kind of save what could be salvaged and to rebuild their lives. I remember one time this guy was trying to load stuff up, and he was just doing it by himself, and a couple other people just went and helped him. I think it kind of created an atmosphere or a spirit where people were like, hey, we're kind of all in this together and let's fix it.
And really just quite a generous spirit that is available throughout the United States. The people of the United States did an excellent job of reaching out and filling in during a disaster like this.